Now, Donald Trump has announced that Iran and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire.
Now, the phased ceasefire would bring about an official end to the 12-day war. The U.S. president later told U.S. media that he thinks the ceasefire is unlimited and it is going to go forever.
A senior White House official said that Israel agreed to the ceasefire deal on the condition that Iran stops its attacks in their country. During the negotiations, the U.S. president communicated directly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
While Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff negotiated the terms through direct and indirect channels with the Iranians.
Reports citing a diplomatic source said that Trump asked the Emir of Qatar to broker the ceasefire agreement with Iran. The Qatari Prime Minister secured Iran's agreement on Monday, which Trump then announced to the world on social media.
Now, Trump said the ceasefire would be a phased 24-hour process beginning in 6 hours, with Iran unilaterally halting all operations. Israel would follow suit 12 hours later. He added that upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world.
Now, the ceasefire announcement came hours after Iran launched missiles at the largest U.S. military facility in West Asia, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, in a move Trump shrugged off as very weak.
Now, calling for a de-escalation, Trump thanked Tehran for giving advance notice of the barrage. Trump expressed and said that the strikes Iran had gotten it all out of their system and there will, hopefully, be no other hate.
Iran's National Security Council confirmed having targeted the base in response to the U.S. aggressive and insolent action against Iran's nuclear sites and facilities. But it added that the number of missiles launched was the same as the number of bombs that the U.S. had used, a signal that it had calibrated its response to be directly proportional rather than escalatory.
Iran is yet to officially agree to the ceasefire, but said it won't retaliate further if Israel stops its military action. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said if Israel stops its aggression no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, they have no intention to continue the response afterwards. He also added that any final decision on the cessation of their military operations will be made later.
A series of powerful explosions rocked Tehran early Tuesday morning. The blasts occurred just hours before a staggered ceasefire was due to take effect. Trump also said that the ceasefire would begin once Israel and Iran wind down and complete their progress in the final missions. For more on this, we're now being joined live by former Kuwait desk officer at U.S. Army Central Command and U.S. National Security and Foreign Policy expert Asha Castleberry, live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Of course, I want to begin by asking you, even now, despite the announcement made by Donald Trump, things remain volatile to say the least. We heard the statements that are coming out from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi saying that there is no agreement in place and it's only post 4 a.m. if there's no aggression, and of course it has no incentive to respond to it. And it's about 5:30 a.m. in Iran right now. How the next few hours pan out, that is essentially going to set the tone for how the ceasefire will be implemented. What's your assessment?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I mean, if we call for a ceasefire, there has to be an agreement between both parties, both Israel and Iran. And so there has to definitely be some sort of authenticity or results to support that there is a ceasefire. Looking at the current situation right now, the state of this conflict is still vulnerable of a tit for tat between the two. So based on moving forward, as far as judging how we may meet this ceasefire, it's somewhat fragile because, again, we're seeing strikes going back and forth. But I think moving forward, the United States is going to continue to try to bring both parties to the table regardless if they feel that there's activity going on between the two.
Absolutely. Now, that being said, if we do see the ceasefire come into effect, I'm sure the nuclear talks is the next big thing that is going to be on the table. Considering the fact that Iran has so far ensured that that there has been no damage to the nuclear facilities, that they cannot repair again, what kind of negotiations do you think can come out of any talks if one anticipates one?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from the international community once again that Iran has to relinquish its nuclear ambition. However, in this situation, it's much more difficult, where I think that Iran has more external support from countries like China, Russia, where they're already actively condemning U.S. strikes. So it's going to further complicate future nuclear talks. And also we're seeing that for the first time, Iran really wants to pull out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which it joined after 1979. So the United States and the rest of the international community has to figure out a way on how to re-engage with them and again figure out a way how to get them to pursue their nuclear denuclearization process moving forward.
Right, Ms. Castleberry, of course, let's just also bring in attention to the fact that Iran was on the negotiating table before Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. Talks were ongoing. There was an impasse, but we were seeing negotiations which were underway and continuing. That being said, with all that has happened in the past 12 days, first Operation Rising Lion, and then the United States strikes as well, Operation Midnight Hammer. Do you think Iran has any incentive to come back to the negotiations table, and do you think it will?
Well, as we continue this type of activity, it starts to discredit the U.S. position. We were involved in Iran nuclear talks or a deal about a good 6 or 7 years ago, and it was actually working. But when we pulled out and tried to go back in, we lost leverage. So with this quick exchange that just happened between United States and Iran definitely has lost a lot of confidence as far as how to negotiate with the United States. So it's going to take the international community to really bring them together to meet some sort of objective on how for them to completely relinquish their nuclear ambition. But it's going to be a lot more difficult as a result of what just happened recently, and then also, too, with regards to giving up on the Iran deal not too long ago. And then you're going to have to deal with another aspect of Israel, where they're going to have to be convinced, too, as well, based on their intelligence reports and open sources, that Iran has completely relinquished its nuclear ambition. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and it's going to be quite challenging to meet that objective.
Right, and also I would like your opinion on the fact that there was a lot of ruckus in the U.S. itself regarding Trump's decision to let the U.S. actually go and strike. If we do see a ceasefire come into effect, do you think it will be seen as Trump's high-risk strikes paying off, despite it being not approved by the Congress back home?
Well, possibly. I mean, you are right. There was a lack of political support, both within his orbit as well as among the MAGA supporters, and of course there's the Democrats. And so as far as bringing them back to the table, I think that was also the causation of it, was the lack of political support. When we look at foreign policy in the United States, it tends to be a bit short-sighted. So if we get past this point of that, we end the conflict between the two and move on to long-term negotiations or ceasefire or some sort of peace deal, then I think that President Trump will most likely gain some sort of credibility about what he tried to do, and then he'll definitely promote that because of him. He's trying to. We have been able to achieve peace between Iran and Israel, and also what we're seeing as a trend with President Trump and the administration, that he is trying to actually be a global peacemaker. And he's been saying that for quite some time. So I think he's going to try to definitely utilize this opportunity to show that he's a peacemaker.
Right, absolutely. Despite the fact that, we still have the Israel-Hamas war and the Russia-Ukraine happening. But let's also focus on, I also want your opinion on this whole thing that played out so fast. It was almost hard to track. We had Iran, attacking these bases in Qatar, which seemed like Qatar was already informed about it beforehand. How do you react to Iran's capabilities as of now, looking forward that they are anticipating that they want to go for a ceasefire if Israel does stop, but of course, looking at their attacks, they were so limited. How do you analyze Iran's capabilities as of now? Was it on purpose, or could they have actually gone further, or it was all planned?
And if I could just add to that, of course, we were speaking to an expert earlier as well who said that this is a war of attrition, and if we were to look at it, both Iranian and Israeli military operations, they are pretty exhausted at this point. Yes. So they would at some point prefer a negotiated solution to this. So do you assess that to be true?
Yes, I mean, when we look at the last conflict and judge it, I would say that it was really hard for the two of them to endure a conflict between two, especially on behalf of the Iranian security forces, where they just don't have the endurance to be engaged in a prolonged conflict. So that's another reason why they most likely will come to the table and discuss peace talks, because there is a level of exhaustion there on behalf of Iran, and as far as Israel goes, they have in order to continue, they need support. They also need support too from the United States and other external actors. So going back to Iran, that's why you're seeing intensive discussions with China and Russia, because of supporting the critical capabilities. In fact, they went to China and Russia and said, Can you provide us security assistance as far as supporting this conflict, because we can't do it alone?
Right. Well, Ms. Casselberry, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA this morning with your insights on this.
Yes, you're welcome.